In this video, I'll show you how to use this damage feature. And damage feature allows you to initiate demolition based on this current and maximum damage values. You can do this using bomb component, gun component, or you can do this in your script using methods, which I will show you later. To use this feature, first of all, you need to enable it here. Just enable this damage property. Then you need to define maximum damage object can take, and current damage. Well, usually it's 0, but you can start with some other values, and then you start applying damage using bomb or gun component. Here in this bomb component, you can see, first of all, I need to enable this damage toggle here, and then I can define damage which I want to apply. So in this case, I will use value 60. And now I can start play mode and explode my bomb. As you can see right now, my current damage is 0, but after explosion, you can see it was physically affected, this column. Now you can see its current damage is 43. This is because right now I'm using this linear fade in my bomb. So my damage also fading, starting from the center. At the edges it will be 0. But you can change fade to none. And then all objects in explosion range will get exactly the same value. Now you can see this time explosion was bigger. And this column right now has damage 60. When I will initiate next explosion, it will get 120 damage, and since it will be bigger than max damage, object will be demolished. Now you can see I just demolished my object based on this damage value. Another way to initiate damage is using gun component. And in this case, you can see damage also has this, gun component also has this damage property. So let me set here maybe 20. Let's say I will use 50 as max damage. Also using Rayfire debris just so you will see where this shot will happen. So now I make a single shot, and if I will select, you see now current damage is 20, so I can make another 2 shots. And after third shot, this current damage will be bigger than max damage, and object will be demolished. On this way, you can have different guns with different damage value, and objects with different max damage value. So you will be able to create demolition shooting objects, and like small firearms will need more shots to demolish an object, while some heavy weapons will demolish object in 1 or 2 shots. In previous example, I showed you how to use it with mesh object, but you can also use it with connected clusters. So this time I have the same setup, but this time I'm using this pre-fragmented connected clusters. And again, I need to enable this damage feature here. And in the same way, I set here value which I want to apply to my connected cluster, and then just initiate explosion. So here you can see my connected cluster column got 60 damage, and I will need to make another explosion to demolish it. And in this case, all these fragments which are inside this explosion range, they all will be detached from this connected cluster, and what's not inside this radius will stay as connected cluster. So this is the difference between using damage with mesh and with connected clusters. So here you can see it was all these fragments inside this radius was detached to separately simulated fragments, while this bottom part stayed as one connected cluster. And in the same way, it works for gun. There is this demolish cluster property in gun, which will make your connected cluster demolish at the first shot, but this time it's disabled. So now I also will apply this damage to my column here. In this case, my max damage is 50, so I will need to make 3 shots to exceed this max damage value. So this is my first shot, second shot, and you can see there's this impact radius property here. And you can enable preview here using this toggle. So this time, all the shards inside this impact radius will be detached just like with bomb. So it doesn't matter where actually I will make shot. This last shot will detach all fragments inside this impact radius, and what was left will be converted into smaller connected clusters. So this is how you can demolish your connected clusters using damage by bomb and by gun components. In previous example, I showed you how to apply damage to whole connected cluster as one object, but it is also possible to apply damage to every shard separately. To do so, we need to enable this to shards property here. Now you can see it doesn't show you this current damage anymore because now every shard will get their own damage, current damage value. So here's my bomb, and its damage is 60. When I explode it, you can see now every shard that got damage, it shows you this damage value. And if I will explode again, and let me move this bomb. So you can see only shards that got this maximum damage value were demolished, but these shards they only get the 60 damage only right now. So I can explode again, and this time only these shards will explode. And this bottom part stayed as connected cluster, and upper part also stayed as connected cluster. And you can see this shard still has this applied damage here. So I can make explosion again to detach them. So in this way, you can demolish your connected cluster in several explosions. Depends on where this explosion will happen. Every shard will get its own damage, and only when their damage will be more than max damage, only then they will be detached from the connected cluster. And in the same way, it works for gun, but gun can apply damage to single shard, which it's better to use with thin objects like walls. But in this case, if you have a lot of fragments over the shooting direction, it's better to use its shards in impact radius, and it will work in the same way. I make single shot, and all fragments inside this impact radius got this 20 damage here, you can see. I can move upper, make another shot. Now I can see that this shards here, they have this 40 damage, and then there's a bunch of shards here, and at the bottom here, that have only 20 damage. And if I will make another shot, only this time some shards will reach this max damage value, which is 50. So after that they will be detached and the rest will stay as connected cluster, but you can continue shooting it. So as you can see, in this way you can create this realistic demolition by shooting your pre-fragmented objects and demolishing them exactly where you shot. So it will be a bunch of fragments detached, only where you shot depends on this damage value and max damage value of your shards here. Also, it's possible to demolish your object using damage by collecting every collision. So you already can demolish your object by collision using this property here. But if your object has high solidity, you will need to deal very big collision to demolish it. If collision will not be big enough, then object will never be demolished. But using this collect property here in damage, you can collect every collision and turn it into damage. Here you can see my current damage is 0, but after collision, it got a 33. If I will drop it again, now it's 62. Now it's 95. Now the slightest collision will be enough to demolish it because it will reach this max damage here. Now you can see after all it was demolished. If you don't want to have very, very small solidity to make your object very fragile, you still can use this high solidity value, but still demolish your object by collecting this current damage after every collision. Also, there's this multiplier property which allows you to define how quickly you want to reach this max damage. In this case, it's 1, and this is the damage I got. As you can see now, its current damage is 33. In this example, its multiplier set to 2. So for this object, it will be 66. Using this multiplier property, you can define how quickly you will get to this max damage and how quickly your object will be demolished. And finally, it's possible to apply damage using this public apply damage method in rigid component. Here, this tutorial script, you can find it in tutorial scripts folder. And as you can see, for mesh object, it's enough only to apply damage value and position where you apply this damage. You just can use object position. But for connected cluster, you need to input exact position and radius. So connected cluster will know where exactly it should be demolished. And here's the scripts I applied to this empty game object. You can see I defined for this one, I defined this mesh object. For this one, I defined this cluster. And all I need to do is just to push space button to apply this damage. So this is how we can apply damage using this public apply damage method.